Dr. Jackson, you recently released a set of policy recommendations for this hydrofracking in our state. If you could give us a brief overview of these policy recommendations, and then the other panelists can chime in too on what they think as well. So moving forward, what were your recommendations?
Well, we've talked about some of those recommendations already, but as a scientist, not surprisingly, one of the things we're calling for is much better information. Data gathering, for instance. So we should have a database of typical well conditions, typical aquifer conditions before drilling starts. That allows us to do a better job of disentangling problems that might arise from natural gas drilling and problems that have nothing to do with natural gas drilling but arise simply because homeowners are looking for the first time. So gathering better information is certainly part of that. Some consideration of state or federal regulations, such as the disclosure of fracking fluids that we mentioned briefly. That's important both from a health standpoint, should a spill occur. It's also important because we can do a better job of tracing potential contamination if we know what to look for. So those are a couple of examples of our recommendations.
Anyone else want to jump in there in terms of Dr. Taylor moving forward? I know you've said we can't really do anything until we know what we're doing.
Yeah. But some of the things about it is that what Dr. Jackson in his recommendations has done is put a straw man out there to say this is what ought to be there. There are other things from Stronger and other organizations, but I look at there and see is that I'd rather have something in front of me to examine and analyze than sit there and have nothing. And try to, oh, what do you think, Vic, we ought to do? And you have to come up with, look upon both Dr. Rao and Dr. Jackson as colleagues that can help us get these issues addressed. And I look at there and see is that when someone says we need to sample the water at all the locations in the Sanford Basin, that's good. I'd like to see that done too. We advocated that 7 months ago, but we didn't have any money to do that with.
You know, one of the things that I would advocate doing is not use any fresh water for the fracturing operation. This is a rather extravagant statement, but technically completely feasible, actually happening in one location in Canada that I know of. So, so that's one thing that I would advocate, and I would say that you know, make it a regulation. I don't really care, but it's something that we should at least very strongly encourage. And to do that, we would use salty water, which is known as saline aquifers. And these people at dinner either know where they are or go find them. And just use salt water, and therefore do not compete with agriculture or any other use of fresh water, which especially in this drought year that we are having would probably be a very welcome idea.
So you're saying don't use fresh water because there are too many other people who want to use fresh water for other endeavors.
That, and technology has moved along to where the fracturing fluid can tolerate salinities greater than seawater. It didn't used to be the case several years ago. The technology has moved along. We need to, this is the same old story I'm talking about, make a virtue of being late, okay? Technology has moved to the point where we can take advantage of that right now. We don't have to do what they did in New York or Pennsylvania. We can start from the get-go. Now, from day one, you can't do that because you got to get the water out of the saline aquifer, you got to find them. But it's something that you can program. You can say, this is my target, and by year X, I want every drop of fracturing fluid to be saline. I believe it's doable, and there's only one way to find out.
Maybe just briefly, Vic mentioned the front end, which is where the water comes from for hydraulic fracturing. It's very important that we think long and hard about the back end, and that's the wastewater side. A typical hydraulic fracture takes 5 million gallons or more. You might get 1 million or 2 gallons of that water back up to the surface, along with some deep water that's been underground for millions of years, perhaps. What do we do with that water? It's currently illegal to inject or dispose of that water to underground. So that's illegal under North Carolina state law. Do we want that water to go to municipal water treatment facilities? I don't think we do. Do we change the law to make deep injection possible, or do we ship that water out of state? We absolutely must consider what we're going to do with the wastewater before any of this happens.
I completely agree, and in fact, it is the recycling of the wastewater, which is, for example, currently being done by Range Resources, among others, in Pennsylvania today, is what drove industry to tolerate the salinity. Because it turns out all these Marcellus and all these zones are such that if you drill with fresh water, it comes back salty.
Oh.
Yeah. So it comes back with anything from half of seawater salinity to 10 times seawater salinity. So with that in mind, the ability to tolerate salinity came from that idea, from the recycling idea. So Rob's point about let us possibly reuse it and send it right back down for fracturing was only made possible because of handling salinity. I'm just taking the idea further and saying if you can handle salinity, why use fresh water in the first place? So same sort of thing, but he's absolutely right. In fact, in my opinion, his point about doing something about the flowback water is more important than just not using fresh water.